this has implications for even how we think about our influence as a church. So this is how we typically think of Christian influence, right? So, church is a house with a cross on it. So, there we go. We typically think of the influence of our church in that it has a kind of a smaller influence here. And then what we would do is that we would draw people in. And as we draw people in, then what happens is that our influence gets bigger and bigger and bigger as people come in. That's how we typically think of the influence of church, right? I would actually suggest to you something different for how our church's influence should work, and actually how Peter envisions the influence of churches working. Instead of us making a bigger impact from one central location, when Peter calls them all priests, every single one of you is priests, his vision actually is that this person would get sent out here, and then they have a first space that's about this big, and they have a second space that's about this big, and then they have a third space that's about this big. And then this person, this priest, gets sent out here into this space. So they have a first space about this big, and then they have a really big second space in their workplace. They have some third spaces that are sprinkled around here. And then this person gets sent out here to their first space and their second space and their third space and so on and so forth. And so what you have is people carrying the presence of God into the various spaces that they're called to go, that they already live. Like, it's not that we keep drawing people in and our influence keeps growing. Now, there's a reality that because there are a lot of Christians that gather together in this building on a Sunday morning and we try to work together to do things, there is a certain level of growing influence that comes from this point. But that is not the primary expression of the church's influence in the world. The primary expression is priests getting sent out to be priests in their spaces and spheres of influence. So, okay. I'm done with the whiteboard this morning. So then, Jesus, he said to his disciples, Matthew 9:37, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." So the translation is, guys, there are a lot of spaces that don't have any priests in them yet. There are a lot of spaces that don't have any priests in them yet. And so in our case, there are a lot of, in fact, in our American culture's case, there are a lot of spaces that have priests in them, but they aren't taking responsibility for the fact that they're priests in those spaces. So there are some Christians who read this verse and about, hey, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And they read this verse and they think, gosh, I'm really glad that there are pastors and missionaries out there to go and take care of the harvest, right? And the reality is, every time Jesus saves a person, that there is an entirely new set of spaces that the influence of the church has opened access to because that person is saved. Like every time somebody gets added to the church, there's a whole new realm of influence that opens up because there is a person that now exists in spaces that were previously untouched. So when Jesus is saying the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, he's like, I don't have very many followers, but every time I get a follower, it just opens up the category for the number of people that could be drawn to me. Okay, so our question was, why are our spaces important? And we've kind of examined that, the impact of our spaces, the importance of our spaces, how it actually multiplies the influence beyond what we could do in one building because it moves us all out into our spheres of influence. So the answer to that question, and so we asked why they're important, but now we're asking, what do we do with our spaces? Now that we understand their importance, what do we actually do with that reality? And the answer to that question, and our main point this morning, is this: that we need to steward every space like God plans to meet someone there. we need to take responsibility for every space like God plans to meet someone there.